So I quit half marathon training and I am finally ready to talk about it. With the rise of running, it feels like everyone is running super far, super fast. Celebrities, influencers, everybody is running a world major, which makes it feel like if you are not PRing on every run, qualifying for Boston, thriving with running, then what are you even doing? So today we're going to reality check the running community and share a darker side that is not so often talked about on social media. We are going to ask the stupid questions, share some probably controversial opinions, and say the inside thoughts out loud. Now, in case you missed our last episode, I did a 2 years postpartum update, which if you're wondering how is that related to running, we talked a lot about my postpartum running journey, which ironically is when I actually made the most progress with running. So if you want a little uplifting story, if you want a little positivity to your day, I will link that down below. But before we get started, maybe let me know where you're at with your running journey. If you're loving it, if you're hating it, if you're stuck somewhere in between. If there's one guarantee with running, it's that you are going to get very, very sweaty. Now, thankfully, today's video is sponsored by Lumi, which if you haven't heard of Lumi, it is a whole body deodorant invented by OBGYN Shannon Klingman that's clinically proven to block body odor all day and continues controlling BO for 72 hours. Now, I am a nervous sweater. I am a cold sweater. I am a sitting at my computer sweater. I can be doing literally nothing and I will be sweating, which sometimes is even worse than the workout sweat because it marinates and then it doesn't smell great. So Lumi sent me a big box of products to try. Depending on what you like, they've got different formats. I got the stick deodorant, invisible cream, deodorant wipes, as well as some soap and body wash. Lately, I've been loving the deodorant stick in toasted coconut. It smells so good. I want to eat it. You absolutely shouldn't, but I'll show you how it looks on your skin. So this does go on invisible. It will not stain your skin or clothes. Depending on what format you like, they've also got this invisible cream. I got the lavender sage scent, and all you need is a pea-sized amount. Rub that into your skin and you can't even see it. If you were holiday shopping, these would make the perfect stocking stuffer for your friends, family, your anxious but sweaty bestie. Right now, Lumi holiday bundles are up to 40% off, which is a great deal for new and returning customers. Plus, they've done an additional offer for our community where you can save an extra $5 off your order, plus get free US shipping on all orders over $30 when you shop via my link and use code ABP at checkout.
So why did you quit half marathon training?
I hate the word quit, which is part of why I struggled to even get to the point of making the decision to quit.
I think you were trying to convince yourself why you can do it.
The original plan had been to do the Toronto Hyrox at the start of October, and then 2 weeks later to race and hopefully PR at the TCS Toronto Half Marathon. Now, in hindsight, was it a bit ambitious to think we could compete in Hyrox and then do the half marathon like 2 weeks later?
It's doable, but it just wasn't doable right now.
Going into Hyrox, Jeff and I had been following very different approaches to training. I had been prioritizing at my half marathon training, so I was doing a lot of running, way higher volume than you, but you are tall. You are also a man. So unfortunately, and very humblingly for me, we're making up words, he can run at like a 9 on the treadmill and do a 5K and break a light sweat. Meanwhile, I'm fighting for my life. That is my absolute peak goal race pace, and that's just you showing up for a day on the job.
I mean, you give me a little bit more credit there.
I mean, okay, the last time you did a 5K on the treadmill, you said, yeah, I did a 9.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And now what actually ended up happening on race day is that Jeff was on death's door. Jeff was not doing well. There had been a toddler plague that had gone through our house. It had hit me a week before. She coughed directly in your mouth.
Right in my mouth.
We were putting Bean to sleep.
Wet.
As you do. As the adult in the house. And he was going in to give her a goodnight kiss. And it was like his face is here. Her face is here. Right as he's like right here, almost as close as you could get. And just like every pandemic type movie you see, or like there's a plague going through the world, this is how it transfers. Okay, it probably started with a toddler. So she coughs directly into his mouth. And I was teasing you a bit because I'm like, Jeff, you're being so dramatic. You're not going to get sick from just that. It hit me last week. It's not going to get you. It got him. It got him very, very bad.
That was on Thursday.
It was on Thursday. Yeah. The race was on Saturday, the Hyrox. And that morning, you were not doing well. You were doing actually
I started feeling it Friday.
He was in a bad mood. And maybe
maybe
we can all...
In my head, I let you down.
You
right away.
You let me down.
Like,
and I'm very much so... I mean, we're gonna start to see some personality traits emerging here. I am very much so a beat a dead horse kind of girl. I'm like, okay, if that's not working, we're going to plan A. Nope, we're going to go plan B. Okay, no plan B. We're going to go plan C. We're going to go plan D. When really you probably should have seen earlier in this journey that, hey, like this really isn't working. Maybe we just take the parachute, take the escape, I don't know. The eject button. So I was in problem solving mode. He did not want to hear it. He was in, I am failing her. She's going to be so disappointed in me mode. We were looking at this from different angles. So I was trying to be very encouraging. I'm like, okay, what does it feel like?
There's so many guys here who are doing way better than me right away.
Right.
Like, why don't you just go for them?
Right. And I'm just like, okay, well, you know what, Jeff? We're in doubles and I literally can't complete it without you. So I will drag your body and we will finish this circuit. I don't care. So we're kind of jog, walk, running, mostly walking that first lap. You're spiraling. I'm over here trying to figure out how to salvage whatever. So we mostly walked 3 laps. I was trying to figure out, can you cough it up? Can you drink some water? Can we pause? Can we deep breathe together? Do you want to do some deep breathing? Can I coach you through some deep breathing? So
the water I thought would help too.
Was not
it made me feel like I was going to choke more.
So we walked. It was very, very slow. We were being passed by everybody. And so then we went to the next station. We made it through the next station and I just kind of,
Next one was the push, right?
I thought, you know what, maybe it's one of those things where you kind of need to ease into it more. Maybe he came out too hot and this is just a very prolonged catching his breath. It was not that. So it was on the following kilometer, what would have been the 3rd kilometer. I just said to Jeff, hey, we're really slow right now. How would you feel? The way this arena was set up was you had to go 3 laps around and then you would re-enter the exercise area and those 3 laps would make up a kilometer. I said, how would you feel about like just doing 2 laps? Nobody needs to know. Keep in mind, we were not cheating because you have the chip timer on your body. You're going across mats. And the math that I did in my brain was, okay, there's a 5-minute penalty for skipping a lap versus we're walking very slowly. He is not feeling good. I don't want him to be pushing his body longer than he needs to. Long story short, we skipped a bunch of laps. We were so out of the loop on how Hyrox worked that when we got to the finish, I'll put it on screen, we actually stopped. And I'm like, is this us? Do we go up here? Do we exit? Where do we go? I don't know. And in hindsight, it was so obvious. It was clearly the finish. We paused, we went up, then we did a belated celebration. Jeff was, I think, still kind of going through it.
I didn't celebrate.
You were not doing well. You were, if you can learn something from us right now, quit while you can. Not the uplifting message, but maybe we'll come to a better conclusion by the end of this video. I don't want to say quit while you can, but know when to call it. So we finished the Hyrox and our time looked good on screen. It looked good for our finisher picture.
No, it still didn't look good.
I mean, it didn't look good, but it looked respectable. Okay, it was like a 126 plus the 1 penalty from our final lap, which took us like a 130 something.
Acceptable, not respectable.
It looked acceptable. But then when we checked our results online, because I didn't think that time was right with all of our penalties, I'm like, no. We have at least 6 penalties.
I looked at it and I was like, oh, is there a maximum amount of penalties?
Maybe there's a maximum amount of penalties you can get.
Stop counting penalties.
So yeah, we looked online and our actual penalties included time, I believe, was 35 minutes of penalties.
Yep.
And it was somewhere in the 150s. And I don't know if we were
For
last.
example,
we might have been last. We may have come last at the time.
Yeah, we might have. For example, Kipchoge.
Yeah.
Might end up running a marathon quicker than we did our 8-kilometer journey.
Yes. There's honestly a lot of elite. Yeah. So that was our Hyrox event. It's hilarious in hindsight. I do find it very funny because we both are very bad losers. I think I've turned a bit of a corner with being a loser lately, and like I can see the funny in it. I feel like you have a you have a longer marinating period before you're okay with accepting losing something, and looking back and laughing, because
Maybe I'm just
it's
in
now
denial
been
that I am a
it's
loser.
been about a month since that happened, and I feel like you've been able to turn the corner with that. But otherwise, we both have a very unfortunate competitive streak. So,
Which is not good when you don't
which is not
win
good
at
when you
things
didn't do the training
often.
to win the event. That was Hyrox. In contrast to that, bringing it back to the half marathon, my first half marathon, which I did last spring, went very, very well. Was everything aside from the weather, everything I'd hoped and dreamed for, and was very, redeeming given the journey that led up to it. I will link a video down below that there's a few videos I have recapping my first half marathon. But my whole goal, and why the goal that is part of why I quit marathon training, my goal was to PR based on the time I had in the spring, which was a 142, I think it was like 30 something, maybe 142. I don't know. But my goal was to break 140. In my Barbie fairy tale princess dream world, 130, like 137, like in the ballpark, anywhere, anything that started with a 137 would be very nice for me. And that is what I'd been setting my training paces off of. So to give you an idea of that, I'd been setting my training paces off of that. I'd been fighting to hit those paces. It was a grind to hit the paces I needed in my workouts to potentially make a 137 happen. Now, I did not have an injury. There was no big event that made the decision to quit for me. It would have been easier had there been. It was a lot of little things that, now that I'm looking back on it, you'd think I would have gotten the memo sooner. I did not, though. I think it all started probably when it was not the same cold as the Hyrox cold. It was a prior cold that was really, really bad. I don't know how to describe it. If you don't have kids, if you haven't been around little kids, I hadn't been around a lot of little kids before I had a child of my own. And I used to always think that parents were being dramatic when they said, "Oh, we're always sick," or "Oh, it's just a different kind of sickness." No, not being dramatic, not emphasizing it. They're just built different. They are built different with their ability to get you sick. So when I got whatever that sickness was back in September, maybe late August, I had vertigo, I had exhaustion. I legitimately woke up every day feeling like I was hungover. Keep in mind, I hardly drink. So not good. The congestion was to the point that it started going down the throat, and we got, I think the technical term is postnasal drip, which I'd never had that, or at least in any serious way before, but it makes it feel like your throat is on fire. I thought I had strep throat or some sort of throat infection because of it. Nope, it's just postnasal drip, because there's so much up here that it's like overflowing back. Sorry for the disgusting visual. So that was the first thing. Then we went right from that sickness into my period being late, which, if you know my history with pregnancy with Bean, that was concerning. I have so many pregnancy tests. Jeff knows, I take like 3, sometimes more each month, because I don't always trust the Amazon ones. Turns out I was just in a really bad IBS flare, and my period was delayed. So I'd been PMSing for what was probably 2 to 3 weeks of terrible digestion, terrible mental health, not feeling good at all hormonally. When my period finally came, you even said that you noticed, and I feel like it's hard to notice changes in your body when you're around yourself or when you're around somebody all the time. But it looked like I probably lost like 5 or more pounds of just inflammation from my body when my period finally arrived. So I was not feeling good. We'll come back to the period talk. And the routine changed. Going from summer into fall, I'd been really looking forward to having what I thought would be more structure, with just like not having whatever. I feel like everybody's on a different schedule from summer versus fall. And yes, we had more structure, but it was more structure that made things a lot more busy. We got an office for the team plans. We've been growing our team. We've been doing some things behind the scenes that soon, hopefully maybe in a big update video, we will talk about. They're very exciting for this community. And Bean has like, she's going to be a big girl. She's going to be a big toddler. So she's starting extracurricular activities, which is just another thing that you have to, put into the schedule, which the schedule was already challenging to keep up with the volume of running I was doing. And it's all of these seemingly little things that just made it really what am I trying to say? Really difficult to be consistent with running. And I think that was part of the problem. The problem was that it was a lot of little things. It was not one big thing that happened that felt like, oh, this was so clearly beyond my control. You know, it's okay. I can give myself some grace. It's because all of these things were my decision, were actually mostly within my control. And I just felt like it was a failure on my part that I couldn't be a super mom, boss babe, runner girly, and keep up with everything. When in reality, you know, it's so clear looking back that my body or the universe was trying to tell me something. One of the first red flags that I have that I know is a sign that I'm moving towards overtraining or maybe overdoing it with running is when my period is late, when my cycle extends, when it goes outside of that maybe 28-day, 35-day range, and I start getting those extended PMS symptoms. It's not just 1 week of PMS, it's like 2 weeks of just misery. And then my period arrives and, you know, it's fine, it's normal. But when that cycle starts to get longer, I don't know if it's a red flag or a yellow flag, that is one of the first signs. I think the nail in the coffin, though, was, and if it sounds like this was just thing after thing, it truly was. The nail in the coffin was when I started getting that SI joint pain, like deep low back. It was not in my back. It really felt like it was the SI joint. And it was weird.
I mean, it was the nail in the coffin because it was
that was what I made the
going through
decision based
that.
on.
We decided to not do
I
it.
just said, this is too much. So what happened was I started getting pain around my SI joint. I have never had SI joint pain, maybe a little bit of discomfort after a really long road trip or something, a long time, you know, slumping in a seat. But I don't get chronic pain. I don't have joint pain. I am normally very on top of my strength, mobility, you know, doing that proper balance of everything. And so it was super weird because it was significant pain that felt like it came out of nowhere. It was to the point where I could not sit still for more than like 5 minutes at a time before I had to just like lay on my side. I couldn't bend forward. Doing something like a deadlift or a forward fold, I could not do without significant pain. I'd have to bend my knees, my back, like it would reach a point and it would not move. So this was very nerve-wracking because I think that came up, was that before Hyrox? Maybe 2 weeks before Hyrox. I want to say 2-ish weeks before Hyrox. So immediately I said, you know what? This has not resolved itself. I got to get in. I got to see a PT. So we saw our usual PT, who's an athletic PT, very talented, great at what he does, has been amazing supporting us, your return to running journey, my general running journey, just everything that I'm doing. And his opinion, based on a quick assessment, was, okay, this sounds like it could be a disc issue, which hearing that, I thought, oh my God, that's the last thing I need to hear. But my instinct, because based on the exercises he was having me do and my instinct of where I was feeling the pain, it did not feel like it was a disc. It felt a lot lower to me, and it was actually reminding me of a discomfort I'd experienced during pregnancy. So one thing that happens during pregnancy is your hormones change, and there's a hormone relaxin that just kind of laxens up all of your joints so that when you go to have the baby and deliver the baby, your pelvis is able to expand in the ways that it needs to get the baby out. And so one thing that can come up throughout pregnancy is pain or discomfort due to that instability through like the SI joint. And that's one thing I started to get toward the end. And this felt kind of like that, but with pain added. So I had the crazy idea. I thought, you know what, I need to get this resolved. Let's go get a second opinion. I went to see my pelvic PT, who I've not seen in almost a year. And I know it's going to sound like weird, but I'm kind of stressed out because I have this half marathon that I need to race and I need to be on my A game with. I can't be taking time off. And her assessment, she said, oh, no, you have a crazy amount of tension in your posterior pelvic floor. And I thought, like, that's so random. She's, yeah, it's not your disc. This is a lot of tension in your posterior pelvic floor that is causing pain in that area. You know, you're not having any nerve pain down the leg. We went through my symptoms, whatever. We don't need to repeat all of it. And that was just so random. It was so random. But she was able to diagnose that based on the volume of training I was doing, admitting and being honest with her about the fact that I had not been the best with my mobility, absolutely not been good with doing kind of my pelvic floor maintenance routine, with my breath work, with the relaxation exercises that I practiced postpartum. And that was just a nail in a coffin because it felt like, okay, I have been ignoring signs in my body for so long that it had to come to something as random as this flaring up. I think I really need to take a step back and reassess. And that's when I had my meltdown to Jeff. That's when I had my meltdown to my therapist, where I knew I was being irrational. I knew I was expecting myself to be able to perform at a professional runner level with the amount of volume I was trying to do. And I was not acknowledging that, okay, you're not a professional runner. You don't want to be a professional runner. You actually enjoy all these other aspects of your life that you feel like are taking away from running and are actually making you not even enjoy your running. You're not enjoying anything. I think it's time to press pause, which for the purpose of this video, I did not clickbait you. I did technically quit half marathon training, but I am telling myself it's a pause on half marathon training. That is how we arrived at that point with the decision. But this is something, and I mean, probably not the exact pipeline, but this is something that I've seen more people, particularly women, probably because I follow mostly women, talking about on social media. Some of the dark side or consequences that come with jumping into running and ramping up your mileage, that transition that happens between when you are a beginner runner going to maybe that intermediate phase, when it's no longer just, most of your runs are 3 to 5 miles, maybe you're doing a 60-minute long run once per week, going to that next level of, okay, I want to train for a half marathon, or I want to train for a full marathon, and I want to improve my speeds. Now your baseline is a 60-minute run. Like, that is the low end for an easy run. Speed work is easily up to an hour and a half. Some of my runs are often longer than that. Long runs are like, you really just need the whole day. One thing nobody talks about is that as you do more running, you also need to do more eating, sleeping, and recovery, which I know probably seems self-explanatory, is maybe really obvious, and I'm just stupid. But I had this wake-up call overwhelmingly with this most recent training cycle, because I was really pushing the limit of how much running I could actually fit into the hours I have in the day. And it's not like I was doing a crazy amount, but like I said, on the low end, most of my easy runs were about 50 to 60 minutes. I understand this is very toxic of me, but if I only had time for, let's say, a 20 or 30-minute run, I wouldn't even bother doing it because it just didn't feel like it was going to do anything, which I know is not correct, but that is where my head was at. And what I didn't realize at the time is that it's not just about being consistent with running, but being consistent with all of the things that allow you to keep running. And when things started coming off the rails toward the end of that half marathon training cycle, that's when I feel like I had a big shift in my attitude, or maybe, I don't know the right way to put it, how much running I can actually fit in my schedule. Because it's not just about fitting the runs in your schedule, it's about making sure you are planning for and budgeting time to do all of those supporting activities, making sure you're actually eating before running, something I'm notoriously bad at doing, eating after running, eating enough throughout the day to support your recovery and your sustained energy, getting enough sleep at night. One thing that is very hard is before entering this training cycle, would wake up at about 5 a.m. every morning, depending on the routine, of course, but that is when I would get uninterrupted work done, because as a toddler mom, the nighttime hours are a lot of the time of day I'm spending with my baby, with my family, I like spending time with Jeff, okay? We tease each other. We like spending time together. And when you're all of a sudden doing this 60-minute run, which has prep and stuff you have to do on either end, it turns into a 2-hour event. So I was losing that work time in the morning. I was staying up late at night to try and catch up on the work that had been displaced by running. I was not getting enough sleep. It just wasn't working. And that is very hard to admit to yourself. That is something, there start to be yellow flags, signs in your body. One thing I have seen a lot of girls talk about online is how just the confusion that comes with doing running, which is something that is supposed to burn a lot of calories, but then feeling very inflamed in their body, or even like they're gaining weight, which is just like doesn't, at face value, does not make sense, because everybody knows running burns a ton of calories. We made a whole video talking about running for weight loss, and we did a follow-up video talking about Pilates versus weightlifting, but that kind of touches on the themes of how higher intensity impact training versus lower intensity impact training affect your body, your hunger, the inflammation, all that jazz. But something I do talk a lot about is how, yes, running makes you incredibly hungry. yes, running can make you bloated and inflamed in your body. It can lead to weight gain. Marathon weight gain is a known thing that I wish people were more open about so that new runners were not so surprised by it. But from a gut health perspective and bloating, running is an irritant to your gut. I mean, if you think about it, just as your joints can get irritated by the bouncing motion, the repetitive impact, it is the same thing for your gut. Your gut is just existing, suspended in your body. It's not locked in place. And so the repetitive bouncing can irritate your gut, especially if you are struggling to hydrate or fuel correctly. If you don't have the perfect balance going on in there, it can become more irritated, it can become inflamed, which can contribute to the appearance of bloating. I mean, you've probably heard of runner's trots, runner's stomach. Tummy problems for runners are a common thing. If you have IBS, I mean, they're just going to be even further amplified. Now, when it comes to inflammation, with any sort of high volume or high intensity training, you are going to have some inflammation naturally as part of your recovery. As you're starting to edge your running volume and your training up, maybe you're going into a half marathon or a full marathon, there's not as much time for recovery. You might feel like you're always inflamed in your body because you are always kind of inflamed in your body. Like that just becomes the reality. And this is where there can be a very slippery slope that I'm sure affects male runners as well. I know, Jeff, you're not super in like the running space. You're not like a running bro. But I think for female runners, women in general, we're not going to tiptoe. We're just going to say it. If we say it wrong, we say it wrong. There is pressure to look a certain way, to weigh a certain amount, especially in female sport. I know that there is some old school teachings, lines of thought that, lighter runners will be faster runners. I think if you're looking at the extremes, maybe that's true. But if it's the difference of a woman having the extra 5 to 10 pounds that she really needs to stay healthy, I don't think that old school thinking is right. And maybe speaking a bit from experience on this and this is why I am so open about running is going to make you hungry. It's probably not the best way to lose weight. Don't sign up for a half marathon or full marathon if you want to lose weight. The reason I'm so open about it is because it came as a shock to me. I really progressed with my running journey shortly after I'd gone through a significant weight loss. I lost about 20 pounds of stubborn fat. I started running. I wasn't running super far. As I started to increase my running mileage, though, I did notice some changes in how I was feeling and some changes in my body. And again, even as someone who's pretty advanced in my fitness journey, I know a lot about fitness, I know a lot about nutrition. This was very confusing. I felt like I was ravenous. I didn't understand if I was inflamed or if I was gaining weight or if it was a bit of both. My digestion was not doing well. And the temptation was to just, I was already at a place where I was struggling with running mentally, figuring out how to find the time, how to progress with this. And I felt like it would just be easier. It'd be one less thing to stress about if my body wasn't changing. Because when I started my running journey, I was so excited for the first time in a long time with fitness to not be focusing on my body. I told myself I was training for performance. I was not training for appearance. But what I can now realize, bird's eye view of my own thoughts at the time, is that yes, I was training for performance, but under the assumption that there would not be changes to my appearance. That was not the deal that I made. And there are people who will not be happy about that, who will just say, if you're training for performance and you have to be okay, whatever happens to your appearance, blah, blah, blah. You are allowed to have preferences for your body. That is my hill to die on. You are allowed to have preferences for your body. And I know for me, weight gain can be a sensitive thing because I spent so long struggling on my weight loss journey. And, it's never just about the weight. There's other baggage that you're carrying. And sometimes when I do go through a period of time of unexpected weight gain, it can kind of trigger some of the mental baggage that was part of that stage of my life. And it's just not a good thing. And that's the tip of the iceberg because we haven't even gotten into injuries, which I apologize in advance. I did not include it in my show prep. I do have the numbers. I'll put them on screen. But something in the ballpark of 40 to 50%, maybe even more, runners get injured per year, which I wish I had a comparison of how many people doing weightlifting and Pilates and all of the other trendy popular activities. But that is a huge percent of runners that I would suspect, I don't know, maybe I can find more stats for you, but I would suspect with the rise in popularity with running, with so many people who've never run before jumping into the half marathon or full marathon training distances, that number may be even higher. I'll put those numbers on screen. I'll link them down below. But one thing I know I struggled with when I first got into running is that I was coming from a weightlifting background. And I don't want to say I had a chip on my shoulder, but I absolutely had a chip on my shoulder because I was a pretty advanced weightlifter. And I really saw strength training and weightlifting as top dog, let's say, in the fitness space. And because I was advanced, because I was very strong, when running exposed weaknesses, I just kind of thought running wasn't for me. I couldn't accept that maybe I had weaknesses because I was so good at weightlifting and I thought I'd been training in the correct way, which I had been. Just because you have a weakness or a weakness is exposed by running doesn't mean you're not strong. It just means you haven't trained this movement. And add to that, because I was an advanced weightlifter, because I'd spent years, mastering the form, making sure I was good at my compound exercises, getting really strong, going through all the steps, going through the embarrassment and the awkwardness of being a beginner. I don't think I fully, had this self-awareness at the time, but I didn't want to be a beginner at running. I felt I had earned being able to skip those early stages. And so I let my ego get in the way of maybe progressing at the slower rate that I should have to avoid injury.
What's the biggest challenge for weightlifters getting into running?
The biggest struggle you will have with hybrid training is volume management. This is why I suspect that so many influencers are getting injured. So many people who maybe start with weightlifting and add running to their plate are struggling with injuries is because of the mindset you're approaching hybrid training with. So hybrid training is when you combine any two training modalities. Most often lately, it's been weightlifting with running. But if you are looking at your schedule as weightlifting and running are two separate things, and as long as you can fit both in your routine, then it's fine. You're going to be okay. Yes, that's kind of true from a specific adaptation perspective, right? If you do weightlifting, you're generally going to get stronger. If you do running, you're generally going to build endurance. But what that doesn't take into account is that nothing exists in isolation with your body. There is still the general fatigue that is going to come from including both of these activities in your routine. And as you increase the volume, whether it's with weightlifting or with running, you are pulling from a finite amount of energy, a finite amount of recovery ability. And as you add more training, you also have to do more eating, more sleeping, more recovery. That's what I think a lot of people are missing. And the fact that you are going to reach a point where there's just no more to give. You are burning the candle at both ends. You're running on empty. And that's when you start risking things like an injury or a decrease in performance with your training.
What changes would you make, or what changes did you make, and what would you recommend?
Okay, so keep in mind, full disclosure, it has taken me a while to figure out what balance of running and weightlifting works. 3 to 4 days of weightlifting max. That is the absolute max if you actually want to get serious about running. There are just simply not enough days in the week. And if you're trying to do the math on that of, okay, like, well, if I have chest day and arm day and back day, whatever days people are doing, you're going to have to consolidate to either a full body split or an upper lower split. My preference is full body. You guys know this. I'm a broken record. That's how we train the Team Plans app, whether it's strength, Pilates, athletic style training, a little subtle plug. But full body training is my preference because that very, very easily can scale down to 3 days of lifting per week, even 2 days if you're in a really high volume block of running training. Whereas that upper lower split, you're starting to have to sacrifice, okay, are we going to cut upper body this week? Are we going to cut lower body because my lower body's fatigued and I want to save that performance for running? So I start with that. So if you want to just take the exact workouts you're doing, figure out a full body template. I did a series on TikTok a while ago. I'll link that down below as well. Figure out your full body or your upper lower template. Fill in the exercises you'd normally be doing. Then you're going to go and examine those exercises and make sure they're actually going to translate to the positions that you will be hitting in running. Once you've got that, it's kind of level one. There's levels to this game. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm excited talking about workout programming. Then you want to mimic the transitions. So every stride happens in a fraction of a second. this is perhaps the biggest thing that weightlifters miss in their training for running. If you are used to doing a lot of slow and controlled reps, even if it's not necessarily slow and controlled, but you're just kind of lifting for max strength, so it's like whatever speed the barbell gets up, that is not going to support you when you are doing a movement in a fraction of a second. This is where you could absolutely make the case for plyometrics. If you don't want to do plyometrics, if you're not comfortable doing those yet, just adjusting the tempo of the exercises you're doing, making sure that you are doing some faster lifting, being explosive on the concentric, on the portion of the range of motion where your muscles are contracting. I know. I just talked your ear off. I get really excited when I talk about the
So if I do all these
programming.
things, I'm going to be able to
Jeff,
get my 6-star medal?
When I say you won't just get the 6-star medal, you will win Boston. And it won't stop there. You will go to the Olympics. You will run I don't know what the record is, a sub 2-hour marathon. You're going to be in the 150s. You're going to be hitting your Hyrox time.
That's right. That's the goal.
See, if he hit his Hyrox time for the marathon, that would be impressive.
If
you follow the app workouts,
yeah,
you train full body with me. All right, you do your single leg training, you do the occasional plyometrics, you make sure you stay on top of your recovery, your mobility, your recovery max in your routine. When I say you will be the most elite marathoner out there, you will win everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you need to do. I
know,
will
that's
guide
why
you there.
I
I will
use-
hold your hand.
That's why we use the terminology in this house, when, not if.
When not if. The world majors. We got to talk about it. We got to talk about Boston. What are the world majors?
The Abbott World Majors are Tokyo, London, Boston, Berlin, Chicago, New York.
Okay, so it is a group of 6 marathons. Truthfully, I don't know what Abbott is. That might be a company, that might be a person, that are very hard to get into. Now, Jeff has done some research. He has pulled some numbers, some stats, some facts for us today. In short, Jeff, why are they such a big deal?
There's a lot of people trying to get into them that don't get in.
Long story short, there's a lot of people that want to run these. And beyond just being, kind of a cool, like, passport travel bucket list type of thing to do, you did pull the exact stats. The main ways that people get in, from what you have pulled up, is lottery.
Mm-hmm. Charity partners.
Charity partners. So is that people having to fundraise money to get in? Okay.
Yep.
People have to fundraise.
Event sponsor bibs. So
Corporate.
Yeah, corporate.
Yep.
And then marathon tour groups.
Which I did not know about, and we think we may have an inside scoop on how people work around having to run a qualifying time. Did we say qualifying time? I think we did.
Qualifying time, we didn't say that, but that's the main way to get in.
Qualifying time is the main way to get in. All of these other ones, or if you don't think you can run a qualifying time, those are other ways to get in. Boston is always controversial. 30,000 spots. It's always overfilled. There's a lot of runners with qualifying times. It's like the thing that you see on social media. If you're deep in the running community, you'll get this. If you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But you'll see people who say, oh, I ran a Boston qualifying marathon, but I didn't get into Boston, which I didn't get at first. So what it means, I think you said...
So I have a stat from 2021. It's the most recent one I could find, that 9,000 people with qualifying times didn't get in.
Okay, so that's significant. Now, again, I'm not completely sure here. I'm guessing most races are a lottery if you meet the cutoff qualifying time. And I think what's so controversial about Boston is that there is no lottery. It is just you have to be within a qualifying time, and then they pull however many spots they have from, like, those number of spots from the fastest time. So it's kind of a toss-up each year because you never know who's going to be running. You never know how many people are going to apply, where the true qualifier will be. It all depends on the numbers and the competitiveness of the field. And some people get angry about this. We'll come back to that as well. We have a lot of things we need to circle back on. I don't know if you had, because you did go down this rabbit hole. So maybe tell us a bit about marathon tour operators, because this is kind of, I would say, bordering on being able to pay to access the events.
Yeah, it's...
Which there's always a way with most things. If you have enough money that you can get into doing them. Welcome to the world.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, I didn't have to do a lot of digging on that because it's just kind of obvious.
Do we have a price point? Is it like a few $1,000s?
No,
or
I didn't find the tour operators.
Oh, so you probably have to. It's a request a consultation kind of situation.
I think it might be something like that. Yeah.
Well, what I'm imagining, because from what he's told me, if you book with one of these tour operators, they put it in very nice language, but they plan your trip to the marathon, which I'm assuming means guaranteed entry. So I've got to think that their threshold for the price, they've probably got some sort of arrangement with the race organizers where if, I don't know, you pay the threshold for the charity bib, or if you pay the threshold for some sort of low-level corporate sponsorship, then they're going to give you the bib. You are paying to play, which again, welcome to the world. Feel however you want about it. It is the way it is. Now, where influencers fit into this, and I can put on my little influencer hat, historically, companies will sponsor events like these to get additional visibility, authority within their field. They will sponsor big events for that reason. When they sponsor those events, as a little give back from the event organizers, they'll say thank you by gifting those companies with bibs. Now, before the current landscape of social media that we're in, those bibs may have just gone to Suzanne from accounting, Janine from HR. You want to run a marathon? Let's try to run a marathon together. I've never run a marathon, but let's make it a fun team building thing. However, in this new age of social media, brands have caught on to the fact that they can sponsor events like these to gain authority within their field, exposure for their brand, but also because they are receiving those bibs, they can kind of double dip on the value that they're getting. And they can say, hey, influencer, who would normally cost this much money to do a series of posts with, what if I just give you entry to this race instead? And maybe I'll throw in like a flight and a hotel package, but truly in the scheme of things, when I've seen which influencers have been running these events, the return on investment that the company is getting from just sponsoring this event and getting several bibs to give out to influencers to then get like an entire weekend's worth of content from this influencer, it is an incredible business proposition. Truthfully, as soon as we can afford to do that with the app, you will see the app sponsoring events. If you are an influencer and we reach out to you with a bib, you'll know why. It's a good ROI. But that's how it works. It is not, contrary to popular belief, when influencers go to these events and they're not running a qualifying time, it's not because they're displacing someone else who could have had right by the cutoff time. That's not it at all. They are qualifying via an entirely different avenue. And really, on the brand's part, it's a very smart strategy. I feel like, I could go off on a tangent about how brand trips are actually very worthwhile, even though they look lavish and crazy when you compare them at the cost per post with influencers. But that's just kind of the influencer landscape. It's not displacing anyone else. It's just the nature of what it is. It's business.
It's business, dog.
It's just business. Now, Jeff, there is something that I really wanted to address because I still have not figured out if this is satire or if this is a real thing.
You showed me a few months ago.
Strava mules. Okay, if you have heard of a Strava mule, I need you to comment below. I'm going to play the video on screen. I'm just going to pull it up right now. I don't know if you have this in your notes, but you don't need to see the guide.
This is a hard video to make, but I have to confess that for over a year now, I have been a Strava mule. So basically, somebody will pay me to run a race with their Strava account on my phone. I did this with the Brooklyn Mile last year, and that was my mule PR. I track my stats on my watch, and then they get the results on the phone. Sometimes they give me their phone, so like this right here is a mule phone for today. Today's actually a slow mule day. This is a guy who's probably gonna run a 2:40 marathon, but he keeps posting slow times, so then when he does run the marathon, his friends
I
will be
love
like,
that though.
"What?"
Okay, you guys get the idea.
My hackles go up.
Yes.
I think it's satire.
But
it's hilarious.
I think it's satire, but
it's one of those things where it's satire.
I think he is joking.
It's happened before.
I think he's joking, but I do suspect this has happened before because even in my, outside of running, but in my engineering experience, there were a lot of people in my program who came from very wealthy families, and they not only had tutors who would do their assignments, but it went to the point of like, my mind was blown when I saw this, but like paying other people to write their exams. And this wasn't even a big thing. It wasn't a big secret. Like everybody in our program knew about it, and it was a common service offered. So if people are doing that for something as serious as writing your engineering exams, like absolutely I would suspect that they're doing it at races, because the only point that you actually need your ID, which I still have not been ID'd at most of my packet pickups, but the only point they're checking your ID is at a packet pickup. As long as you're not running a time that's like first place in your field, I don't think they're going to go and confirm it was exactly you running a running race. So people could be qualifying for Boston doing this. People could be displacing people who lawfully qualified for the races. This is who you should really be mad at. I mean, I'm not trying to go to bat for the influencers. There's a lot of flaws on that side, but the Strava mule, I don't know, I could see it. So what is next? What is life like after quitting running, quitting half marathon training, giving up on my hopes and dreams? I will tell you, I took probably a week, which was my period week. It was another period, just always a joy. It's a cycle like that. I took that week to drop my training down a little bit and give myself some time to ease back in, because truthfully, my luteal phase made me feel like I've never run a day in my life. But now that is behind us, in case the white pants didn't tell you, I am in fact back to following a structured plan for running. I did impulse sign up for a race. I'm not going to say which one yet, but it is next March. It'll be my longest race yet. I would like to do some events in between, probably in the shorter distances. There aren't a lot of 5Ks coming up. Like, there's a few fun runs. There is a 10K in December. It would be nice to maybe fit one more 10K in there. And I will say, I did not quit the TCS event fully, because I did do a 5K that weekend. My Strava and my watch, they did not cooperate. Strava thinks I was running like a 3-minute kilometer, which absolutely did not happen. I think my true time was probably somewhere between my watch and the official result, which would be like around a 22-minute 5K, which I was very frustrated with. But it's okay. I did a very good job of coaching myself mentally through that race. So yeah, like I'm back to training. I still love running. I think it's going to continue to be a love-hate as I'm upping my mileage and as I'm finding that sweet spot and how to just, I don't know, like it sounds stupid, but like relearn how to eat to meet my nutritional needs at that level of training. The sleep is something that I actively struggle with, because you just need so much sleep. Like 7 hours does not cut it. When my volume is high, I need 8, 9 would be lovely, but I also have other things to be doing with my life. So that's what's going on with me. A change I would like to see in the running community is more love for the shorter distances. With how popular it's gotten, I wish that people didn't feel like the only option was to jump into a half marathon or a full marathon. I think the running community has become a lot more accessible in certain ways, but kind of once you get past that newbie runner hump, it feels like the only way to be taken seriously and the only way to be valid in the running community is to jump into half or full marathon training. And I would love to see more love, better organized, better marketed events in the 5K or 10K distance. Jeff knows. I think as of right now, the 10K is my favorite distance to race. And it's not like I've done a ton of 10Ks. I just like the pacing of it, because you don't have to come out of the gates like sprinting as you in a 5K. You do have a little bit of time to settle into a pace and to build your race pace and to pick it up for the end. So I am very excited to see what kind of time I can put down for the December 10K. Fingers crossed we have okay weather. You never know. One thing I will mention before we wrap for today is we talked about the World Marathon Majors. There is something I learned about just recently called the Super Hops. It is the runners travel through Lisbon, Cardiff, Prague, Berlin, Valencia, and Copenhagen. You do all 6 races within 5 years, and you'll earn an extra medal for doing all the races. I think they're still building this series out. It started in 2022, but I'm excited to see something like this, a well-marketed, well-organized, like kind of fun travel bucket listy type race series that is for a distance other than the marathon. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you're training for a half marathon, a full marathon, if you would be interested in training for the shorter distances. I'm really excited. I'm really proud that I'm training for a faster 10K. I think the goal, this is how I set my goals. I think it'll be 45 minutes. This is a very, very safe goal. I want to go sub 45 because my last 10K PR was 47 something. I want to go sub 45, but like Barbie Princess Dream World Fairy Tale would be in the 43s. And Jeff's just gonna, what do you think? You're going on like a 30-minute 10K? Probably.
What about doing a 10K.
Just doing a 10K, that's the goal. Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Well, that is it for today. I do hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, definitely shoot me a thumbs up, subscribe, do all the things you know you need to do, because I love chatting with you. Jeff's really giving me some crazy eyes right now. But see you in the next episode. Bye.